carpets and carpets of strawberries. Hello and welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather. We are going to go out to the garden in just a second, but I wanted to give you guys an update on our freeze-dried tomatoes. This is 5-gallon bags worth of frozen tomatoes from our garden, all dehydrated or freeze-dried down and then powderized, and it fits in this half-gallon jar. Now I am going to be putting this in a Mylar bag for long-term food storage, but I wanted to show you the really cool layers. This represents each tray from the freeze dryer because I blitzed them in my grinder all separately, and then I put them in this jar, and you can see the different colors that I guess represent the different types of tomatoes from each harvest. I thought that was pretty cool and I wanted to show you, but we need to go get a harvest basket and head out to the garden. I have brand new baby seedlings up. Oh, bless you. Good morning. Good morning. In the last week since our last garden tour, we have gotten some rain, and it had been a little while since we got some actual rain, so I had been watering with the hose. There's really nothing like a good rain for the garden. It really makes things grow like so much faster. Part of the reason for that is there's soluble nitrogens in rainwater, and so it acts like a fertilizer every time it rains. You can see our scatter brassica bed has really started to take off. It's filling in with a lot of green. I noticed that even some of the little radishes are starting to bulb up on the bottom. See that there? There's actually quite a few doing the same thing. And you're really able to see the different varieties in this scattered lettuce bed here. We should be able to harvest from this in a couple weeks. It does appear that my garden kitty has crushed a couple of my plants, but considering how much is growing here, it's really not too bad. So there's a couple of lettuce plants that have gone by the wayside here, but some of them have actually gotten quite big enough where if I wanted to, I could do what's called a cut and come again harvest method on these lettuces and get actually quite a lot of food out of each plant. Now my plan with these particular lettuces is to let them just head up and harvest them all at once as head lettuce. So these are butter crunch lettuce, and I really like them to act kind of like a burrito shell or a taco shell, or kind of use them as a wrap. And in order to do that, I like to let the leaves get as big as possible. So I am going to leave these ultimately as head lettuce, but I want to show you what I mean by the cut and come again harvest method. So you can see how big these lettuce plants are getting, and what we can do, you see these bigger leaves on the outside, and then there's some smaller leaves in the middle. The plant is actually putting on its new leaves from the center, so we can come to the side here and harvest leaves like this. Just pinching them off the side like that. And then we can use these for our salad, and that plant is going to continue to grow and grow and grow and grow, and we can keep harvesting from it. All I really need to do is leave about 5 or 6 decent healthy leaves in the middle, and the plant will have enough leafage to collect the sun's energy and keep growing, and we'll actually get more food out of each plant from harvesting this way. Now, as you can see, these little baby greens aren't much for a lettuce wrap, so I'm not going to do that with these particular plants like I mentioned, but this is how I plan to harvest that other bed that we just looked at. We're going to have lots and lots of baby green salad out of that bed. Growing greens in the garden is genuinely one of my most favorite things. So versatile, and there's a really quick turnaround between seed to harvest. And with something like this, you can harvest and harvest and harvest for quite a length of time, and there's a lot of reward in that. I do have a couple spinach plants here. There's one there, there. This one might not make it, but I've got a few. And back here is our pak choi. It's looking lovely. There has been a decent cabbage looper or cabbage moth presence in the garden, and I haven't treated these plants at all for those cabbage loopers because there really hasn't been that much damage. I've seen a couple little holes here and there, but that's nothing to treat for, not yet. Our lovely okra tree here has a lot of okra on it. I really need to come out and harvest some of these. That cut and come again harvest method that I mentioned for the lettuce, I can do that with all of these greens. I can do it with the kale, with the chard, with the spinach, and get really nice variety salads. Back here behind our scattered lettuce, our basil is really starting to take off, which is really good. I don't have super long until our estimated first frost date. I was definitely late getting this basil planted. We should be okay until about the last week of October as far as our first frost goes, and even then it should be pretty light. So if I haven't been able to harvest enough basil to get the amount of pesto that I am hoping for, I should be able to cover them. And if not, I might be able to take some of these up, put them in a pot, bring it in my house or bring it in the greenhouse and still get a decent harvest. But honestly, now that they've really started growing, it won't be long, and I will have to thin some of these out. Some of these are planted too close together really to get a lot out of. I probably don't want these basil plants to be any closer than about 8 inches apart, so I will have some thinning to do, but that is a-okay. These are really great snacks or soup toppers. So over here where we have our fall and winter started in seed trays, I am starting to see some of the peas come up. Let me see. I don't see any broccoli, but there are some cauliflower seedlings. Here's some Brussels sprouts here. One thing that I am noticing that I don't love is that there's something that's coming along, I'm guessing birds, and literally biting off the tops of some of these seedlings. See there? I don't know if you can see it, but there's like little stems sticking up with no leaves, so these plants are goners. That is unfortunately one of the things that we do deal with here. I may cart these seedlings into the greenhouse. There are birds that get into the greenhouse, but it's far fewer of them. Or I do have some bird netting that I could drape over these, but their ultimate destination is going to be the greenhouse anyway, so when we go over there, we'll cart these guys with us. But this kind of thing is definitely the reason to plant more than you need. So there's some new ones coming up. I will have to thin these out too. I planted multiple seeds per planting hole. And because some of the pots have lost their seedling to the birds, I'm gonna do what I can to like transfer some of those seedlings into those pots, so we might not really have a loss. We are entering the neglected tomato section of the raised bed garden. I honestly haven't come back here since the last time we had a garden tour. I'm kind of tomatoed out, and these plants they're done. Some of them actually look pretty good, but the tomatoes are breaking down kind of fast. Still have a few little snacks though. This wild thing right here, this is my asparagus, and it is going to need taming probably after the first frost of the year, and I'll be sure to take you along when I put this bed to bed for winter. I've been leaving all of these volunteer yellow wax beans on the vine so they can mature and I can collect the seed. Our peppers and things are all still doing really well. I'm gonna not harvest peppers today. I've really been enjoying using the garden as a pantry and just leaving the peppers on until I need them. Hey you, you'll be nice. How goes it? I did move some of the goats over into their breeding groups, and there's always a lot of chatter when I do that, when I break up the herd and put them in different pastures. So you're gonna hear some goats. This week I plan to actually plant carrots in our new Vigo garden bed here. I think I'm gonna do that in a separate video, partially because there's a planting method that I've used in the past that needs a couple days of prep, and I did not prep for planting right now, but that's okay. I am starting to see some weeds come up in here already, which is not surprising. We loaded this bed with some of our homemade compost, and we are not great at making compost. All I've done for our compost is just pile like food scraps and animal bedding in one spot, and then just kind of wait a little while, and I didn't stir anything. I didn't make sure that ratios were exactly perfect. So our compost pile didn't heat up enough to be able to kill the seeds that were in it. So there's quite a few weeds, but that's okay. It's kind of the price that I have to pay for not having to pay anything to fill this bed. Like, this doesn't bother me at all because filling this bed was absolutely free. I am noticing that we're seeing quite a few decomposing mushrooms. This one is beautiful. I don't know anything about mushrooms, so I always assume that I can't eat it, so that's fine. Because this bed is under the cover of the greenhouse though, it is not ever seeing the rainwater when the rain falls, and so I am making sure to water this really well a couple times a week, even though there's nothing in it. There's nothing like plant life in it, not much besides some of these weeds, but there is a lot of microbial life that does need water to survive. So I want to make sure I keep up the health of this bed by watering it, whether there's plants in it or not. And the same thing goes for my poor neglected Greenstock over there. We have not talked about her in a while. This is the second year in a row that I have allowed some of these plants to die in here. The entire greenhouse, besides these 2 containers up here, is automated in its watering, and so it is really easy to forget that I need to water this, and so it's been a little bit neglected for another year. And of course this volunteer tomato probably doesn't help, but I did notice just now while watering that some of the strawberries are in fact alive, and they've put out plenty of runners. See the strawberry plant in this cup here? It's put out these vines essentially, and along the vine are these little plants called runners. And these little runners put out tiny little roots on the bottom, and once they're well rooted, the vine that attaches it to the parent plant will die back, and you have a whole new strawberry plant that's only about a foot away from the parent plant. This is how you can get carpets and carpets of strawberries. And this is exactly how I'm going to be able to repopulate this neglected Greenstock with strawberries. Because what I can do is take off these runners, put these roots straight down into moist soil, and they should root and survive. So I've been in the process of cleaning out and amending this space in order to accept our fall and winter starts. I'm going row by row every week and cleaning out and amending each row. There's 6 rows here in the greenhouse, and so within 6 weeks, the hope is to be completely amended in here so that our plant starts can go straight in the ground. This is row number 2 that I need to take care of this week. These are our black-eyed peas. There's actually quite a lot of peas still on the plant, but in order to stay on track, I need to clean these out. There's quite a few little peas on here that don't have very long before the seeds on the inside are fully mature, but then there's also some that aren't as far along, like this guy right here. I've never done it, but I have been told that you can eat these black-eyed peas when they are young and green and use them like green beans. So I am going to harvest some of these like this and try that out before I cut these plants at the base. So I didn't get a whole bunch off of there. I have a feeling I'm probably just missing some because I've not trained my eyes to look for the immature ones. I'm so used to harvesting the mature pods that I don't know, there could be some on there, but these should be awesome to add to a stir fry this week anyway. I did leave some pods on the plants that are still green, but they look like they have pretty mature seed on the inside. My hope and feeling is that when I cut these plants off at the base, that these guys will dry out just fine and that we'll be able to harvest the peas inside. I've been waiting to harvest them until they are dry like this. You can harvest them when they've turned like a little bit yellow and they have a little bit more juice in them. They're not quite so dry. Here's an example of the peas when they come off of a dry pod. And then one of these green ones, let's open this. This guy shouldn't be too far off. See, the peas are of, the peas are of good size and they should dry out at least a little bit from just being cut off of their nutrition from the parent plant. So I need to get to chopping these. It's kind of heartbreaking, but also 'tis the season. So I've got my pruning shears here and I'm just gonna be cutting off each of these 30 plants at their base. and that's going to cut the nutrition to the vine. Obviously it's going to cut the water to the vine, and it shouldn't be very long before these guys wilt. And the reason for doing this is that they genuinely are easier to clean up, especially if you plan to reuse the trellis. The plants are a lot easier to clean up when they have dried up a little bit. Now, we did use this pretty flimsy type of a trellis this year, and it did well for us, but I'm not sure that we are going to be able to reuse it, but I would kind of like to. I am planning on putting shelling peas in this row this winter, and so if I can reuse the trellis, I would like to. But also this is just going to trigger the plant into maturing the pods that it has left, and so we'll harvest those in a couple days. There we go. Until next year, black-eyed peas. It was a really good year with these. This particular okra plant, the Okinawa pink, I have decided to leave these pods on so I can collect them for seed. We just did the black-eyed pea row this week. These okra plants are coming out next week, and then that Okinawa pink okra plant is coming out the week after, and I want to allow those pods to mature so I can collect the seed, because I am out of my Okinawa pink okra seed, and that's my favorite variety that I've tried. Arguably, I probably could harvest some of these pods and just leave one on, like this one. It's likely got enough seed in there for many years. And behind it here we have our Kalima bush beans, which have started producing. Here's one. Isn't that pretty? So this is my first time growing these, and I see why Jess from Roots and Refuge, I see why she recommends them. They're thin and tender. These look a lot like the beans that I grew up eating, and I actually haven't harvested more than this one yet. I didn't realize they were this far along. As you can see, there's lots of flowers on these plants. Oh man, and there's definitely some beans. There's been some beans apparently. Well, there wasn't a whole ton on these plants, so I didn't miss them by very much, which is a good thing. So this harvest helped round out what we got from the black-eyed peas, so this should be really good with dinner this week. The purple hull peas have lost most of their leaves. There's still quite a few pea pods on here that I could harvest, but I think I'm gonna do that later on in the week, probably about the same time. Ah! Gross, that bug. Stink bugs. It's stink bug season. But I think I'll harvest the purple hull peas the same time that I harvest all these black-eyed peas. It's probably going to be impossible to see, but honeybees are flying this morning. I had recently moved this electric netting for our goats, and I made a very interesting discovery out in our field. Had to show you, totally relevant to the garden tour. So this is the backside to one of our buck areas. Our buck Havoc lives in here and gets his girls from time to time. But I just opened his pasture up to let him and Christine graze on some of the weeds out here. And look at all this. Can you guys see what these are? I don't know how I missed this for, this long, but these cherry tomatoes that love to fall everywhere, also love to volunteer everywhere. It's my favorite cherry tomato, this yellow spoon tomato, or yellow currant tomato, they're also called. And so at least one of these plants is this variety, but there's quite a few plants scattered over here, and they could be really anything. Last year, towards the end of the year, I put our boar hog in here, and we fed him a lot of the end of the season garden refuse, as you do with pigs, and some of the seeds washed out this way with the rain, and we have all of these plants. So I did notice that a couple tomato plants earlier in the year were starting to pop up inside this pen, and while tomatoes are safe for goats to eat, the stems and leaves really aren't in a lot of quantity. So I spent quite a lot of time picking the tomatoes out of that pen and throwing them over this way. And I don't know if those tomatoes happened to take root or if these were tomatoes that actually started from seed out here, but it's bonus food and I love it. And knowing how prolific these guys are, because they're here now, they're probably going to be here forever, and I approve. Hello, handsome boy. I don't have anything for you. I really hope you guys are enjoying seeing the wind down of the spring and summer garden as the fall and winter garden starts to make its appearance. I think next video we'll plant the carrots in that fun way that I told you about, that I teased about, and we'll also take down the black-eyed peas. I'll show you how many peas we were able to harvest this year, as well as some of the ways that we use them. So if you are not subscribed already, please do so, and I'll see you guys again soon.